The day the police told Stanley that his wife never existed was the day his world cracked open. She was gone. Just like that. One evening, he came home from his big electronics shop in the big city of Manchester, and the house was quiet. No smell of pepper soup, no humming from the kitchen, no folded clothes on the bed. Her phone was switched off. Her bags were gone. Her name, Christine, was still on the marriage certificate in the drawer, but she was gone. At first, Stanley thought maybe she was angry. Maybe she needed space. But 2 days passed, he wasn't still able to reach her. He went to the police. They took her picture, her name, and asked him several questions. Then, after 2 weeks, they called him to the station. There's no record of her, the officer said, barely raising his eyes. Not in the national database. Not in any hospital. No school history, no ID. Not even a bank account. The woman you married doesn't exist. Stanley laughed at first. It made no sense. He had lived with her for nearly 2 years. They got married in church, and she had friends. She shopped at the market and danced at his cousin's wedding. But when he went looking, her friends didn't know her real name. The church couldn't find their wedding documents. The shop where she used to buy fabric. They said she came in once or twice, nothing more. The landlord who collected rent from her before marriage had no idea where she came from. The family she presented to him as hers were nowhere to be found. Her parents and 2 siblings were nowhere to be found. Stanley didn't know her village exactly, as the traditional marriage rites were done in the city as insisted by her supposed parents, which her supposed kinsmen attended. Even her old Instagram page was gone. Everything about her seemed like a lie that never existed. Stanley barely went to work. The shop stayed locked for weeks. He sat in the living room, staring at old pictures, trying to find clues in her smile, in the way she tilted her head or folded her hands. Nothing helped. He started losing weight. His mother came over a few times, asking questions, but he told her they were just going through something. He couldn't say more. How could he explain that the woman he married had erased herself? He hired a private investigator. The man asked for every detail, texts, photos, bank transfers, anything. Weeks passed with no results. Every trail ended in nothing. The investigator said she used prepaid SIM cards, had no official ID, and never stayed in one place for long before meeting Stanley. Her job at the catering company was under a false name. The address she once gave as her uncle's was an empty lot. Stanley kept searching on his own. He visited markets, churches, hotels, old streets they walked on together. He showed her photo to strangers. Most shook their heads. A few said she looked familiar, but no one could say who she really was. Then something strange happened. Stanley found a stack of old letters in her box, letters in different handwriting, different languages, all unsigned. Some were love notes. Others seemed like instructions. There was one with numbers and names that made no sense to him. He sent them to the investigator. 2 days later, the man told him to stop digging. It was bigger than he thought. Stanley ignored him. He went online and searched similar cases. He found stories of men who were scammed by women who vanished. Some ended in theft, some in heartbreak, some in madness. None matched exactly. In all those cases, the woman took something. But in Stanley's case, nothing was missing. His bank account was untouched. His business remained intact. His personal documents were all still in place. He went through every bag she left behind. There were no signs of stolen information. No camera. No spy tools. No recordings. She took her clothes, her phone, and left. That was all. That was when the confusion turned into something deeper. If she was running a game, why leave empty-handed? If she was a con, why waste 2 years on someone like him? That question haunted him more than anything else. Then, just when he began to convince himself that maybe he was going crazy, he received a message. No number, no name, just a single sentence. You were the only real thing in my life. He dropped the phone. Imagine having a spouse whose entire existence is a lie. Christine grew up in an orphanage in Chelsea after her parents died in a car crash when she was 2. The place started as a shelter, but became something darker over the years. The children were never adopted, were groomed, trained, and used. They were taught how to lie, how to steal, how to survive. It was never called a scam, it was called survival. They moved the kids across states, gave them new names, new faces, and new stories. Christine was one of the quiet ones. Smart, obedient, good with details. She studied people fast and made them trust her. At 16, she had already lived 3 different lives under 3 different names and had engaged in several petty scams. The organization watched her closely. They said she was ready for the real game. Stanley was her first target. She entered his life slowly. A casual meeting on Facebook, small chats, friendly visits. She knew exactly what to say, how to act, when to pull back, when to lean in. Everything was planned. Even their random meeting at a wedding in Lisbon was staged. The woman who introduced them was part of the system. The house they later rented together was already marked by the organization. But somewhere in the second year, something changed. Christine started sleeping. She stopped reporting to her handler. She delayed updates. She ignored instructions. She wasn't supposed to marry him, but she did. She wasn't supposed to live with him that long, but she stayed. The lies became harder to say. The nights beside him felt real. She found herself laughing without faking it, crying without needing to. And one day, she left her assigned phone in a gutter and walked away from her next mission. The organization noticed. She started getting warnings, first through anonymous texts, then threats and photos of her movements. They reminded her that she belonged to them. They reminded her what happened to those who ran. She tried to keep up the act a little longer, hoping they'd forget. But they didn't. They tightened the net. Her last message to them was short. I'm out. Don't follow me. That was when she disappeared from Stanley's life. She didn't leave because she wanted to hurt him. She left to protect him. She knew they were watching. If she stayed one more day, he would have been in danger too. But running wasn't easy. She changed her name again, cut her hair, lived in abandoned houses, hid in easy. She changed her name again, cut her hair, lived in abandoned houses, hid in buses, traveled by night. The organization had eyes everywhere. They had people in churches, schools, even in local government offices. She never stayed in one place for more than a week. She worked small jobs, cleaning, waitressing, helping traders in markets. All cash, no trace. She missed Stanley every single day. She wanted to reach out, but she couldn't. Not yet. Then, one night, someone tried to grab her outside a guest house in Mangrove. A man she once trained with. He said she had become a liability. He said they needed to clean up her mess. She fought and escaped. But she knew it wouldn't end there. She had one choice left. She had to go back and tell Stanley the truth, even if it cost her everything. Stanley didn't sleep much anymore. After the message he received, which was actually from Christine, he started to believe she was alive. Somewhere out there, the woman he had loved was still breathing. He didn't know why she left or what the truth was, but he felt it in his chest. She didn't lie for no reason. Something deeper was hiding beneath everything. He went back to the private investigator, gave him the strange message, told him to dig deeper, beyond names and documents. The man hesitated but agreed. A week later, he returned with a lead. There had been reports, scattered and mostly hidden, of a group moving through Manchester for years that has been taking in abandoned children, training and using them. There was no name or face to the group. Only stories, disappeared people, and untraceable crimes. It was more than a scam. It was a system. Then one evening, as the rain fell hard on the tin roof, Stanley saw her. Christine stood in front of his door, soaked from head to toe, thinner than he remembered, older in the eyes. No words were said. She stepped in, dropped her bag, and collapsed into his arms. She told him everything that night. She told him about the orphanage, the fake names, the handlers, the missions, the fear. She told him it was her first real assignment, but also the last one she ever wanted. She told him about the threats, about the man who tried to drag her away in Mangrove. She had been running ever since, but she couldn't keep running forever. Stanley listened, silent, Not with anger, but something deeper. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't trust. It was love, raw and broken, but still alive. They stayed inside for days. She slept, and he watched over her. Slowly, they started putting pieces together. She still remembered names, safe houses, patterns. Stanley wrote everything down. They knew they couldn't go to the local police. The group had reached, but there were journalists who dug into stories like this. Whistleblowers, human rights lawyers. They made a plan. Christine reached out to an old contact from her orphanage days, someone who had escaped earlier. He was in Manchi now, living quietly. He agreed to talk, but only in person. Stanley and Christine traveled there in secret, carrying the evidence they had gathered, such as letters, phone numbers, photos, codes from her old life. The man confirmed everything, gave them more names and proof. They brought it to a journalist in Manchester, someone known for exposing child trafficking rings. She listened, asked questions, and promised to look into it. A week later, she published the first story, then another. Names were blurred, but the organization was exposed. Calls flooded in. Survivors came forward. The group started collapsing from the inside. But it wasn't over. 2 weeks later, someone broke into their rented flats in Lisbon. Nothing was taken, but the message was clear. A warning. They were still being hunted. Stanley and Christine disappeared again, moved from place to place, and constantly chased by the organization. The journalists arranged for international help. A human rights agency took their case. Christine was placed in a protection program. Christine was offered relocation, but he refused to leave her behind. Months passed. The headlines died down and arrests were made. Some members of the group vanished into the wind, but the core was cracked. Christine testified anonymously. Her statement led to a full investigation into the old orphanage. Several hidden locations were shut down. Some of the children, now grown, were found and reunited. Stanley opened a new shop in a quiet town. Christine helped part-time, under a new name. She still looked over her shoulder, still woke up sweating some nights, but Stanley never left her side. They renewed their vows, just the two of them, and a promise, this time with no lies. She had lied about everything in the beginning, but in the end, her love was the only thing that had ever been real.